Hey, welcome to my channel. I'm a little a day late for it, but talking about Formula One, the Australian Grand Prix. If you saw, you saw, and you know. It's really surprising how things went down. Kind of unfortunate for George Russell, unfortunately, but also for a lot of the drivers that were out there, except for Max Verstappen, of course, as well as Red Bull. I mean, they did really well. Same thing for Lewis Hamilton. As the race progressed, first off, George Russell, of course, basically was out in the lead for a while there, to the point where like he got the step up on Verstappen as well as Hamilton for that matter. So it was like basically Lewis Hamilton is number two, and basically Russell number one, with Verstappen, in third place basically, and Hamilton was holding him off a little bit as well. And then you had Alonso as number four basically in the number four spot for a while there. Um, to the point. So it came down to this basically. After Alex, George Russell's friend, Alex Albon crashed. One of the things was it became a safety car initially, and at that point, usually when you have a safety car, usually teams will bring in a driver basically to change their tires and such. And in that situation, I think Mercedes probably did the right thing, changing George Russell's tire. Granted, he was in first, and then by going in, during the yellow flag with safety car, changed his tires, and of course, he was in seventh place. But eventually, everyone else would be eventually have to change it down the lines where he wouldn't. So it was a good strategy. And in hindsight, no one knew what was going to happen. I mean, honestly, the fact that it happened, and through because of gravel and such, that no one knew that the FIA was going to like basically say, you know what, hey, let's put a red flag and have a restart. Honest, and by doing that, basically at that point, everyone else would be able to get in and change their tires, but leave it off, and that restart at that point in time of what the lead, what whatever the positions were, with it, which at that point was Max Verstappen's number one, Hamilton number two, and Alonso number three, and of course Russell all the way down to number six or seven or eight, basically. So it kind of sucks for Russell at that point. But at the same time, after that restart, it worked out somewhat well for Hamilton at a point where like he got the start in this the first restart. He was leading for like 2 to 3 laps essentially, and it was one of those things where it was a matter of how long do you think he could last for? Because to fight off Verstappen, I think it's a case where like the Mercedes cars wasn't that great unless Russell was in there to help him out, or vice versa. I don't think they could hold up Verstappen for long at that point, which turned out to be the case. And Verstappen, of course, overtook Hamilton. So it was Verstappen, Hamilton, and Alonso at that point. And now let's not forget, like in hindsight, as we said to the first restart, prior to that with the first virtual, for the first safety car, even Hamilton says like, "Hey, look, my tire's not going to hold out. Why didn't you guys change up my tires either too?" They're like, he was basically kind of complaining, like, "Why did you change Russell's tires first instead of my tire?" Basically, I thought I'm the number one on this team, basically. So Hamilton even thought otherwise too as well before realizing it was going to be a red flag and such. Russell being Russell, thinking like, "Oh, wait, if we didn't change my tires, I think I would have won the race," because he felt if he was in first place, that he would have been ahead of both of them, Verstappen and Hamilton. And if he was ahead and Hamilton was number two, he felt that Hamilton would have held off Verstappen, being a quote unquote team player. He would have held off Verstappen, and that he probably would have won. Now, whether that would have happened, I doubt it, because more reality speaking, Red Bull has a far superior car than Mercedes right now at this point. Verstappen doing really, really well. I mean, he's pretty much. It looks like he's got this, third championship in a row this year locked in place. Unless something dramatically happens, it looks like he's going to be winning it. The only closest competitor will probably be Sergio Perez, Checo, because the fact is like I said, Red Bull's car is really impressive. I think it's going to be a battle for the second place, which is going to be between Mercedes and Aston Martin. But in any case, it's to the point where after that it comes down to the second restart where Kevin Magnussen basically, where he basically essentially crashed out and created that second restart red flag, that things changed dramatically at that point. And quite honest, and it happened towards the later and tail end of the race at that point, like on lap 54, I believe. One of the things is if I'm Verstappen, I'm pissed off because it's like, and even Alonso's like, no, we don't need to restart. I think everyone felt that they need to restart. Now Hamilton on his end was like, yeah, maybe this is good for us, because quite honestly, Verstappen was already pretty much uh, 7 to 8 seconds ahead of Hamilton at this point. At this point, he was cruising. So by the point that they would, if the race had ended at that point, Verstappen would have won easily, handily, without having to worry about things. Now with the restart, based on the fact of the first restart where Hamilton got the jump on him, his fear was, okay, you know what? He's on first, Hamilton's in second. Like, it could happen again. He might, Hamilton might shoot him again, and then, and if Hamilton overshoots him, it's catch up for Verstappen at that point, and chances are, most likely, if that were to have happened, Hamilton probably would have won the race. He probably would have won the race. But of course, see what we saw. After the second restart, Verstappen was able to maintain the lead. Hamilton was in second, but of course, all chaos ensued at that point. Basically, where essentially, first off, Sainz unfortunately bumped into Alonso, kicking him off for third place and like basically spinning his car. Of course, Sainz being in third place came into third place as a result, and then of course, all other chaos ensued to the point where like basically Gasly and Ocon pretty much crashed out completely with both their cars. So basically, Alpine was pretty much out the door at that point. And it kind of sucks for them at that point too, because quite honestly, Alpine with Gasly, he was in fifth place. He was poised to finish in fifth, which is going to be pretty good for Alpine at that point. And they were like, it kind of sucked for them at that point. And honestly, it wasn't a case which they thought that was going to happen, but it happened. Coming to the third restart now, it came down to the point of like, all right, did they first had to determine, did they finish that segment? It seems like they did finish the segment. Enough had gone past the first turn basically to the point where like that was it. Whatever it is, they should restart. When the restart happens, it's just going to be one full lap with the safety car, and that's how it's going to end basically at that point. So it came down to the order of like, how would the order turn out to be? Because at that point, at that restart, it was already Verstappen, Hamilton. So that was already given. That was already good. It just came down to what was 3 to 7 basically at that point, and it was or 8 basically. And it was interesting because at that point, it was Sainz number 3, Hulkenberg number 4, which so Haas would have finished 4th if this was all okay, and then of course 6 and 7 or 5 and 6 was McLaren at that point as well too. And then, unfortunately, for Aston Martin, both Stroll and Alonso were like 7th and 8th. And Alonso was not too happy about that if this is what would happen. Of course, FAI realized, like, hey, look, signs, everything happened. So to the point, like, the segment sort of finished, but to the point where, like, you know what, they're just going to finish it off, but they're going to have it what the original restart was, which basically was the Verstappen and Hamilton, but then they're going to put Alonso at third, and then fourth would have been Sainz. Fifth was I forgot who it was, to be quite honest, and then of course sixth would be, I forgot the exact order. You know what? I'll just look at the order basically because we already have the order at this point, so it's practically this order now at this point. So it was a Stroll going from fifth to fourth. Stroll. Sergio Perez 7th, Lando Norris at 8th, and so forth, basically. Now, if I'm McLaren and Haas and Ferrari, like we're pissed off. Now, what sucks for Ferrari, specifically with Sainz, was it was a case where he was penalized 5 seconds. 5 seconds because of the fact of the hit to Alonso. Because of that, going from 4, he dropped automatically back down to 12 at that point. So Stroll being happy as it is, because you know what? Aston Martin's happy because like they got the 3 and 4 spot basically. So they're there. So like they got more points against Mercedes at this point, with quite honest. McLaren jumps up from 7 to 6, but at the same time, I think they would have preferred to have been 5-6 with Norris and Piastri, as number 6 at that point. Haas being Haas, I mean not Haas being Haas, but Haas, I mean Gunther Steiner must have been livid, to be quite honest, because his driver is at 4. If everything had gone according to plan, they would have finished at 4th, and it would have been the highest that Haas has ever been, finished off at. Unfortunately, it wasn't the case, and in this case, Hulkenberg or Nico Hulkenberg and Haas basically finished 7th. Pretty good, but not the best that they've ever finished. I think they finished 6th back in 2017 with Romo Grosjean at one point. But in any case, it is what it was. Basically Max ultimately won. And now let's not forget Sergio Perez. He was down like 15th at one point, and he jumped all the way up to 6th and 7th basically at that point. I mean, quite honestly, it shows that the superiority of not the driver. Well, the driver is good, but the superiority of the Red Bull car at this point, to the point where like it's like honestly, it looks like it's going to be another championship for Red Bull at this point because the way if Sergio Perez, drives the way he drives and without falling behind, and always if he was able to finish within the top three, Verstappen's most likely going to win them all at this point, unless there's some kind of mistake or something like that. Honestly, I think for this, it's going to be Red Bull winning the champion constructors cup, as well as the fact that Max Verstappen, if everything goes the way it is, basically, and the way if he keeps driving the way he does, he's pretty much going to win their third straight championship in a row. Hamilton, it'd be great if he could finally get that number 8, but it's highly unlikely. I mean, Mercedes, it doesn't seem like they've been able to identify what the issues are, and they're trying to fix it, but I don't think they're going to make it to what they need to. And the fact that Aston Martin now is ahead of them practically shows that is Total Wolff really that great of a director basically or team principal? Because remember, Total Wolff came in and he inherited pretty much. I think Christian Horner called it out properly. Basically, Total Wolff inherited a really good, set of, basically a great working cog machine, basically with, great car and such, and like Total Wolff inherited it, and he's never really been challenged at this point. So the question is like, let's see how Total Wolff does in the next 2 to 3 years, because if Mercedes can't recover in the next 2 to 3 years, I think we don't see Total Wolff at this point, quite honestly, because Christian Horner called it correctly. Total Wolff basically inherited this, whereas at least Christian Horner, it seems like he's the team principal to be basically at this point. He knows what he's doing. Now, Aston Martin, I mean, pretty much practically the same engine, different design, of course, slightly different, but like look what it is, and that brings up to the point of like with Sebastian Vettel, basically, how real good of a driver was he? Because look at what Alonso has done, and Stroll for that matter, almost practically the same car, same engine, practically slight differences. But Sebastian Vettel could not do what Alonso's doing. The question is, could Sebastian do what if Sebastian Vettel was back, could he be where Alonso was? I mean, quite honestly, Vettel and Alonso together, it would have been interesting. But honestly, it doesn't look like Vettel was there. I think it's more of a case of basic since the engine change in 2012. I don't think Vettel was able to identify how to adapt to those engine changes. And that's where the thing is, I think he did, because he didn't know how to adapt. I think that's why I don't know if he is a great driver. He's a really good driver. Yes, you could provide him with a good car, decent enough car. I think he's good enough. But he was provided a good car last year with, Aston Martin. But it seems like he wasn't doing well. Whereas Alonso provided a really good car. Shows how good of a driver he is. Both Alonso and Hamilton basically were able to adapt to the engine changes and such. And they show how good of a drivers they are. Now, the fact that Mercedes doesn't have a really good engine or basically a good car for Hamilton, shows that basically it's one of those things where provide Hamilton with a great car, he will win. Shows it's the same thing with Verstappen, basically. Provide Verstappen with a great car, shows how really good of a driver he is. But from this perspective, I think what we've seen here, what we saw, of course, in the Australian Grand Prix, I think the way the race comes out is basically, and let's not forget Ferrari. I think Ferrari's going to have issues at this point to the fact that Leclerc had to basically, in the first lap, he pretty much flat out crashed the car. It's more of a case of does Leclerc deserve to be there? He seems more of like a complainer than a driver, to be quite honest. Ferrari, I think it's give him another 2 years, to be quite honest. I think another 2 years, and they'll probably come back. The question is, does Leclerc remain the same? Because honestly, I think Sainz is probably a better driver than Leclerc. If Ferrari were able to make the adjustments needed for next year to give themselves a great car, honestly, if I'm Mercedes and I'm Ferrari, yeah, I do a driver swap, basically. Give Hamilton the Ferrari, put Leclerc on Mercedes at that point, and let's see how it goes from there. Sainz being a great teammate, I think he will help out and challenge Hamilton, and and of course, seeing this race yesterday, you saw that the rivalry and the I don't not the rivalry, but also sort of the displeasures between them is still there between Hamilton and Alonso. Hamilton even refused, like, I'm not going to lose to this guy. He was fearful that Alonso was going to overtake him, and he was like, I will not let him beat me in this. I will not let him beat me in this. It's like it's showing like these guys still have that animosity, which is unbelievable. Um, which kind of makes sense. The real question is if Nico Rossenberg came back, uh, it'd be interesting to see with Hamilton. You would have Alonso on one side and Nico on the other. Nico on the other. Basically, it's like you got basically Alonso and Rossenberg, Nico. What would Hamilton do? Because it feels like he has major animosity between these two drivers. That if they both were like challenging Hamilton, what would he do? And like he would probably refuse to listen. He would probably want to go to another team, basically with a better car. I mean, there's no other team he can go to either. To be quite honest, I mean, there's no way he's going to go to McLaren because they're I don't know what happened. They're just it's a complete show at this point. AlphaTauri, it's not happening. Williams, it'd be great, but like they don't have the car at this point for him. Honestly, Haas, I think they're still building up. They got to make themselves what they need to do. Alfa Romeo, as good as they are, they're not that great, of course. And of course, in this case with uh, was it Aston Martin, who do you switch off with? Basically, like you're not going to take kid Stroll. Papa Stroll's not going to let that happen. That's the reason why he bought the team for his kid, basically at this point. So Lance Stroll is going to be there at this point as well too. And honestly, the only thing I could see if you can see is basically Hamilton going to Ferrari. But anyways, I'll leave it. I mean, Hamilton going to Red Bull, that's not happening. I think they're happy with Checo being the number two spot for Verstappen, challenging him a little enough. I mean, Checo does want to, of course, want to be the number one, but it seems like he's not. He knows full well he's far outclassed and outskilled with Verstappen as being, the better driver. But with that, I'll leave it at that. Please leave your comments in the comment section or any feedback. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Verstappen will win a third world championship in a row? Do you think Red Bull, will basically win the Constructors' Cup based on like the first three races? Or do you think things will change along the line as well too? Honestly, I'm just going to call it right now. I'm going to say Verstappen has the third world championship. I'm foreseeing that there's been some massive changes, or whatever maybe, or an injury for that matter with Verstappen. I think he's going to win it. Let's see how it works out. And also, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It'd be great. And if you like or dislike, it's up to you. I prefer to if you like the video, that's great. If you dislike the video, dislike it. I mean either or. I'm not too concerned about it. But the other aspect is like I probably will come down the line later on in the year. One of the three races, either Vegas, Austin, or Miami. I'll definitely be one of them, and I'll try to see if I can take pictures or videos of it. It'd be great if I could live stream it, but I don't know if I can live stream while there. Unfortunately, I don't have the number of subscribers, the 1,000 subscribers, or whatever it may be, to live stream it entirely. But with that, I'll leave it at that. From my phone, that is, sorry. But with that, I'll leave it at that. Again, let me know your thoughts about this, about the Australian Grand Prix race, what the results are. Do you think F1 did it right with Alonso, bringing everyone back to where they were after the second restart, being, the same spots that they were, same positions? And do you think it was too much of a harsh punishment for Sainz getting a 5-second delay based on the fact that, like, it showed that he did bump into and rear-ended Alonso? The question is like, was it to a point where like he had no choice but to, because if he'd gone in any other direction, he probably would have like caused a much major issue at that point as well too. But with that, I'll leave it at that. Unfiltered, unedited, and unrehearsed. Until next time.